During labor, my father-in-law burst into the delivery room and screamed, "You're not pushing that baby out while being such a difficult bitch." Then he tried to hit me. My husband grabbed him in a chokehold and security dragged him out. But what George didn't know was that I'm a forensic nurse who documents everything, and his assault attempt just triggered a chain reaction that would destroy his entire life. I should explain how a violent man like George underestimated exactly who he was dealing with. I'm Emma, 24, and I work as a forensic nurse at Seattle Children's Hospital, earning $89,000 annually. My specialty is documenting abuse cases and working with law enforcement to build prosecutable cases against perpetrators. I've testified in over 40 criminal trials and helped convict dozens of abusers. More importantly, I maintain meticulous documentation of everything in my personal life because my professional training has taught me that abusers always escalate, and evidence is everything in court. My husband Caleb, 27, works as a software engineer making $105,000 at a tech startup. We've been married for 2 years, and from the beginning, his father George has been a problem. George, 54, is a construction foreman who makes around $65,000 and has always resented that his son and daughter-in-law out-earn him significantly. He's also a man with serious anger management issues and a documented history of violence that my professional background helped me uncover early in our relationship. What George never realized was that when I first met him, I immediately recognized the behavioral patterns I see in my work every day. The controlling demeanor, the casual cruelty disguised as jokes, the way he spoke to his wife Martha like she was property. Within weeks of dating Caleb, I'd already run a comprehensive background check on George through my professional contacts at the hospital. I discovered 2 prior domestic violence convictions from when Caleb was a minor, multiple arrests where Martha had dropped charges, and a restraining order filed against him in 1998 by a former girlfriend. I documented every interaction I had with George from day one. Every inappropriate comment, every threat, every display of his volatile temper. I maintained detailed logs with dates, times, witnesses present, and exact quotes. My nursing supervisor had taught me that abusers follow predictable patterns, and George was textbook. I knew he would eventually escalate, and when he did, I would be ready with evidence that could put him away permanently. During my pregnancy, George's behavior worsened dramatically. He made increasingly violent statements about what he would do if I disrespected his family. When Caleb told him we wanted to keep the baby's gender a surprise, George exploded, claiming I planned to get rid of the baby if it was a boy because I hated men. This accusation was particularly revealing because it showed his mindset. He genuinely believed women were capable of the same casual cruelty he displayed daily. What George didn't understand was that his escalating threats were being systematically documented by someone who understood exactly how to build a criminal case. Every voice message he left, every text he sent to Caleb complaining about me, every witnessed outburst at family gatherings, all of it went into my evidence files. I was building a comprehensive pattern of harassment and threats that would be admissible in court when the time came. The night I went into labor, I'd specifically instructed the hospital staff that only pre-approved individuals were allowed in my delivery room. I'd listed this restriction in my birth plan and had it noted in my medical chart. George was explicitly excluded from the approved list. Despite these precautions, 13 hours into labor, the door burst open and George stormed in with Martha trailing behind him. I was in the middle of a contraction when George started yelling that I was being dramatic and needed to stop acting like a princess and push the damn baby out. When I told him to leave immediately, he responded with that vicious statement about me being a difficult bitch, then lunged toward me with his hand raised. The intent to strike me was unmistakable. I've seen that exact body language hundreds of times in my professional work. Caleb reacted instantly, grabbing his father in a chokehold before George could make contact. Hospital security arrived within 90 seconds because I'd activated my panic button the moment George entered. Everything was captured on the delivery room's security cameras, which I knew would provide indisputable evidence of his assault attempt. But George had made a critical error in judgment. He just attempted to assault a forensic nurse who specializes in abuse cases, in a hospital where I'm well known and respected by staff, with multiple witnesses present and security cameras recording everything. From a legal standpoint, he couldn't have chosen a worse target or location for his violence. The stress of George's attack caused our daughter Lily to go into distress, requiring medical intervention to complete the delivery safely. This meant George's assault hadn't just targeted me, it had endangered his own granddaughter's life. In our state, assault that endangers a fetus during delivery carries enhanced penalties, potentially adding 3 to 5 years to any sentence. Within hours of Lily's birth, I was already coordinating with the hospital's legal department and my contacts in law enforcement. The attending physician, Dr. Rebecca Foster, had documented the fetal distress directly caused by George's attack. 3 nurses witnessed his assault attempt and were prepared to testify. Security had provided me with copies of the video footage. I had everything needed to file criminal charges that would likely result in significant prison time under our state's 3 strikes law. What George also didn't know was that Caleb had finally told me about his father's criminal history the week before Lily was born. George had 2 prior domestic violence convictions, both from incidents when Caleb was younger. This made any new violent felony his 3rd strike, meaning he would face mandatory sentencing of 15 years to life if convicted. The day after we brought Lily home, George showed up at our house demanding to see his granddaughter. When Caleb refused him entry, George began making threats about what would happen if we kept him from his family. I recorded this entire interaction on my phone while simultaneously live streaming it to cloud storage. George was digging his legal grave deeper with every word. That evening, I contacted Detective Lisa Harper, who I'd worked with on multiple abuse cases at the hospital. I provided her with my complete evidence file on George. The documented pattern of escalating threats, witness statements from family members about his violent behavior, the hospital security footage, medical records showing Lily's distress during delivery, and recordings of his continued harassment at our home. Detective Harper reviewed the evidence and immediately recommended filing charges for attempted assault, child endangerment, criminal trespass, and harassment. Given George's prior convictions, the district attorney was confident about securing a conviction that would result in a lengthy prison sentence. The evidence was overwhelming and professionally documented to prosecutorial standards. George's first mistake was underestimating who he was dealing with. His second mistake was continuing his harassment campaign after I'd already built a solid criminal case against him. 3 days after our hospital visit, he began calling my workplace, trying to file false complaints about my fitness as a nurse. He called my supervisor, claiming I was unstable and shouldn't be around children. These calls were immediately reported to me by my supervisor, who knows my professional reputation and work quality. More importantly, George had now committed witness intimidation and harassment related to a pending criminal case. Each phone call he made was being recorded and would add additional charges to his case. But George's biggest miscalculation was targeting Martha's relationship with us. He began threatening her, saying he would make her pay if she continued visiting Lily without his permission. He didn't realize that Martha had been secretly working with a domestic violence advocate for months, building her own evidence file and preparing to leave him. The night Martha called us crying, saying George had grabbed her wheelchair and threatened to leave her stranded if she didn't stop visiting us, I knew we had reached the point where immediate legal action was necessary. This was elder abuse and disability-based domestic violence, crimes that carry severe penalties in our state. I contacted Detective Harper and provided recordings of Martha's call, along with my documented history of George's threats against her. Within 24 hours, we had warrants for George's arrest on multiple charges: attempted assault from the hospital incident, witness intimidation for his calls to my workplace, elder abuse for threatening Martha, and violation of disability rights for his threats to strand her. When George was arrested at his construction site, his co-workers witnessed him being led away in handcuffs. His employer immediately suspended him, pending the outcome of the criminal charges. In construction, having violent felony charges means losing bonding and insurance coverage, effectively ending his career in the industry. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. George's public defender reviewed the evidence and immediately recommended he accept a plea deal. The prosecution's case was comprehensive: security footage of the assault attempt, medical documentation of fetal distress caused by his actions, recorded threats and harassment, witness testimony from hospital staff, and testimony from Martha about his ongoing domestic violence. George's attorney explained that with his prior convictions, going to trial and losing would mean automatic life sentencing under the 3 strikes law. The prosecution offered a plea deal: 15 years in prison with possibility of parole after 12 years, provided he agreed to a permanent restraining order and forfeiture of all parental rights regarding access to Lily. During the plea hearing, George finally realized the full scope of what his assault attempt had cost him. The judge read each charge and the potential sentences if convicted at trial. George was looking at the possibility of life in prison for attacking a forensic nurse who had systematically documented his pattern of violence and built an airtight criminal case against him. George accepted the plea deal. He was sentenced to 15 years in state prison and is currently serving his time at a medium security facility 300 miles from Seattle. His construction career is over, his relationship with his son is permanently severed, and he will never meet his granddaughter or any future grandchildren we might have. Martha left George the day he was arrested. Using resources provided by the domestic violence advocate and financial support from Caleb and me, she moved into an accessible apartment in a senior community. For the first time in 30 years, she's free from his control and abuse. She visits us weekly and has built a beautiful relationship with Lily. The restraining order remains in effect indefinitely. George cannot contact any of us directly or indirectly, cannot come within 500 feet of our home or workplaces, and has no legal rights regarding Lily. If he violates the order after his release, he'll face additional felony charges that could extend his sentence significantly. My professional colleagues have praised my handling of the case as a textbook example of how to document and prosecute domestic violence effectively. The hospital has used my evidence-gathering methods as training material for other staff members who work with abuse victims. Several attorneys have consulted with me on building similar cases against repeat offenders. Caleb has processed his childhood trauma through therapy and now volunteers with organizations that help children of domestic violence survivors. Watching him transform his pain into advocacy for others has been incredible. He's become the father I always knew he could be: gentle, protective, and present for Lily in ways his own father never was for him. Lily is now 8 months old and thriving. She's hitting all her developmental milestones and bringing joy to everyone around her. She has 2 loving grandmothers in my mother and Martha, plus an extended network of family and friends who adore her. The cycle of violence that defined Caleb's childhood has been permanently broken. George underestimated the wrong person. He thought he could intimidate and assault a young woman giving birth, not realizing he was attacking a forensic professional who specializes in putting men like him behind bars. His moment of rage cost him 15 years of his life, his career, his family relationships, and any chance of being part of his granddaughter's life. Sometimes the most satisfying justice comes from simply letting abusers face the full consequences of their own choices.